Like, subscribe, and drop a comment if you can handle the truth. Because once you step inside this story, there's no turning back. The sirens reach Goulburn before dawn. Their red and blue lights slicing through the fog that clung to the razor wire like damp breath. Inside the prison walls, officers stood frozen around the metal workshop, boots planted, hands hovering near holsters they weren't allowed to draw. The body lay face down between a lathe and a steel workbench, blood darkening the concrete in a slow, deliberate spread, as if the building itself was bleeding. The dead man's name was Daniel Mercer, inmate, 38, serving 20 years for armed robbery. But that wasn't what made every guard in the room uneasy. Daniel Mercer had been scheduled for release in exactly 11 days. Detective Senior Constable Ethan Hale arrived as the sun threatened to rise, its light pale and useless against the grim reality inside the workshop. He'd seen crime scenes in alleyways, suburban kitchens, and roadside ditches, but prison deaths carried a different weight. In here, every movement was watched, every breath accounted for. And yet, someone had still managed to kill a man without a single alarm going off. Hale crouched beside the body. Mercer's wrists were bound behind his back with industrial zip ties. Contraband, strictly controlled. His throat bore a deep, precise cut. Not frenzied, not emotional. Clean. This wasn't a fight, Hale said quietly. Sergeant Linda Crow, the prison security chief, nodded stiffly. Workshop cameras went down at 3:12 a.m., came back online at 3:29. 17 minutes. In Goulburn Prison, 17 minutes might as well have been an eternity. The workshop smelled of oil, metal, and something coppery. Hale tried not to breathe too deeply. He stood and scanned the room. Tools neatly returned. No signs of a struggle. Whoever did this had known exactly what they were doing and exactly how much time they had. Mercer wasn't popular, but he wasn't hated either. He'd kept his head down, worked his shifts, and stayed out of trouble. The kind of inmate who survives by being invisible. Invisible men don't usually get executed. By mid-morning, the prison was locked down. Inmates confined to cells. Guards tense, tempers short. Rumors moved faster than official statements ever could. Some said Mercer had snitched. Others claimed it was gang retaliation. A few whispered something more disturbing, that Mercer had been silenced because he was about to walk free. Hale and his partner, Detective Rose Navarro, began interviews immediately. Cellmates, workshop supervisors, night guards. Every answer felt rehearsed, filtered through fear and loyalty. Navarro leaned back after their fifth interview. Nobody saw anything. Nobody heard anything. Cameras go out, and suddenly everyone's blind. Hale stared at the interview room mirror, knowing someone on the other side was always watching. Prison doesn't breed randomness, he said. It breeds patterns. They found the first crack in that pattern just after noon. A junior guard named Michael Rudd requested a private word, barely 23, hands shaking as he spoke. He'd been assigned to the East Corridor during the blackout. I wasn't supposed to say anything, Rudd whispered, but I saw Mercer earlier that night. He wasn't scared. He was relieved. Relieved wasn't a word that belonged in prison. Rudd explained that Mercer had been pulled aside during evening count by another inmate, Jonah Pike. Life sentence. Former enforcer for a violent syndicate. A man whose name carried weight behind bars. What were they talking about? Hale asked. Rudd swallowed. I don't know, but Mercer said something before he walked away. He said, "It's almost over. They can't stop it now." Navarro's pen paused mid-sentence. They pulled Pike's file. Transfers between units. Disciplinary write-ups. And one detail that stood out sharply. Pike had been moved into a different block just 48 hours earlier, directly adjacent to the workshop access corridor. Coincidence was a luxury Hale didn't believe in, but Pike denied everything. Sat calmly in the interview chair, eyes steady, voice smooth. Mercer? Pike said. Didn't know him well. Sad thing. Prison eats its own sometimes. You were seen speaking with him hours before his death. Navarro pressed. Pike smiled thinly. In here, everyone talks. Doesn't mean anything. Except it did. The autopsy came back before nightfall. Cause of death confirmed. Time of death narrowed to the exact window of the camera blackout. But the medical examiner added something unexpected. There was no defensive trauma, she said. He didn't resist, which suggests he trusted the person who restrained him. Trusted or believed he had no choice. As the day dragged on, Hale reviewed Mercer's case file again, this time focusing not on his crime, but on his recent activity. Requests, appeals, meetings. That's when he found it. A sealed document, flagged and restricted, filed under Internal Affairs, not Corrections. A note referencing Mercer as a cooperating witness in an ongoing investigation. Navarro looked up slowly when Hale showed her the screen. Witness to what? She asked. Hale didn't answer. He was already dialing a number he hadn't used in years. If Mercer had been talking to police, then his death wasn't just a prison murder. It was a message. And as Hale stared at the file, one final detail caught his eye. A scheduled transfer request, approved but never executed. Daniel Mercer had been days away from leaving Goulburn Prison, but not as a free man. As they prepared to open the restricted evidence locker tied to Mercer's cooperation agreement, Hale felt the air in the room shift heavy and wrong. Because if what was inside that locker was real, then Mercer hadn't been killed to silence the past. He'd been killed to protect something still alive. The locker was smaller than Hale expected. Gray steel, scratch paint, a cheap padlock that suggested someone wanted secrecy without drawing attention. When it finally clicked open, the sound echoed too loudly in the silent evidence room. Inside were 3 items. A burner phone sealed in plastic, a folded prison-issued envelope marked confidential, and a flash drive no larger than Hale's thumb. Navarro reached for the envelope first. This isn't standard, she muttered. Hale already knew that. Nothing about Daniel Mercer was standard anymore. The letter inside was handwritten, tight and controlled, as if Mercer had been forcing himself to stay calm while writing it. Hale read silently at first, then aloud. If anything happens to me before release, you need to know this wasn't about my old case. Goulburn is running a shadow system. Protection favors silence. I gave names. I gave dates. I gave proof. Someone inside the walls is feeding information out, and someone on the outside is paying for it. Navarro exhaled slowly. Jesus. The burner phone was next. Log messages, deleted call histories, and one unsent draft saved minutes before Mercer's death. They know. The cameras. Pike wasn't the messenger. He was a warning. Hale felt a chill crawl up his spine. The flash drive was last. It took less than 30 seconds to realize why Mercer had been marked for death. Video files, audio recordings, surveillance clips stitched together from different dates and angles, guards escorting specific inmates into blind spots, doors unlocked during supposed lockdowns, money transfers routed through shell accounts tied to relatives of prison staff. At the center of it all was a name Hale hadn't expected to see. Sergeant Linda Crow. Navarro stared at the screen, disbelief hardening into something sharper. She's been running security here for 12 years. And for at least 4 of those, Hale said quietly, she's been selling access. Not drugs, not weapons, people. Mercer had uncovered a trafficking pipeline operating entirely within the prison system. Selected inmates, those with violent histories and no chance of parole, were being leased out. Disappearances staged as transfers. Bodies never recovered. Official paperwork sealed. The prison wasn't just holding monsters. It was exporting them. Hale shut down the computer. We can't sit on this. Navarro nodded. And we can't trust anyone here. That reality became terrifyingly clear less than an hour later. As they left the evidence wing, the alarm screamed to life. Not the usual lockdown signal. This was different. Urgent. Panicked. Inmate missing. A voice crackled over the intercom. Repeat. Jonah Pike is unaccounted for. The one man who might connect Mercer's death directly to the trafficking operation was gone. They found Pike's cell empty. Bed neatly made. Toilet flushed. No signs of forced exit. The camera covering the corridor outside his cell had recorded nothing but static for 11 minutes during the night. 11 minutes again. Patterns. By evening, Goulburn was no longer just a crime scene. It was a pressure cooker. Hale's phone buzzed nonstop. Internal Affairs wanted updates. Corrections wanted silence. And somewhere between those two forces, someone wanted him gone. The warning came as a folded note slipped under his windshield wiper. "Leave this alone, detective." Mercer didn't. Navarro read it twice, jaw tight. "They're watching us." "Good," Hale said. "Let them." But bravado didn't stop bullets. On the drive back to Sydney, a black SUV merged too close behind them. Stayed there. Too steady. Too deliberate. Navarro checked the rearview mirror. "That car's been on us since the exit." Hale didn't respond. He was already accelerating. The SUV followed. What came next happened fast. Tires screeched. A sudden impact as the SUV clipped their rear bumper. Navarro fought the wheel as Hale swerved, narrowly missing the guardrail. The SUV backed off just enough to avoid witnesses, then disappeared into traffic like it had never existed. No plates, no markings. A message, not an attempt. They pulled over miles later, hands shaking, breaths shallow. "They could have killed us," Navarro said. "They didn't want to," Hale replied. "They want us scared." That night, Hale didn't go home. He checked into a cheap motel under a false name and spent hours replaying Mercer's recordings. One clip stood out now more than ever. Grainy footage from a maintenance corridor. A guard's voice, distorted but familiar. "You give me the list," the voice said. "I make sure they disappear." The date stamp was from 3 weeks ago. Mercer hadn't just exposed the operation. He disrupted a delivery. At dawn, Hale received a call that changed everything. A body had been found on the outskirts of town. Male, mid-40s, throat cut, hands bound with industrial zip ties. Jonah Pike. But that wasn't the worst part. Carved into Pike's chest, deep enough to leave no doubt, was a single word. Snitch. Hale stood over the body, the weight of it settling into his bones. Pike hadn't been silenced quietly. He'd been displayed. As Hale's phone buzzed again, this time with an unknown number, he knew the rules had changed. He answered. A calm voice spoke. "You're asking the wrong questions, detective." Hale clenched his jaw. "Who is this?" A pause. Then, softly, someone who knows what Mercer was really about to testify. The line went dead, and Hale realized with a cold certainty that Daniel Mercer hadn't been the end of the story. He'd been the beginning. By the time the sun rose over Goulburn Prison again, the case was no longer unofficial. It was dangerous. 2 dead inmates, 1 missing chain of custody, and a corruption trail that now pointed higher than anyone wanted to admit. Hale stood outside the cordon where Jonah Pike's body had been found. The word carved into flesh still burned behind his eyes. Snitch. It wasn't just a threat. It was a warning to anyone thinking about telling the truth. Navarro joined him. Phone pressed her ear, voice low. When she hung up, her face had gone pale. Internal Affairs just pulled us off the case. Hale didn't look surprised. Crow. Officially, they say conflict of interest. Unofficially, Navarro hesitated. Sergeant Crow resigned at 4 a.m. Her house is empty. Gone. Clean. Just like Pike. Hale exhaled slowly. Then she was never the top. They moved fast after that, quietly copying Mercer's files and pushing them to secure federal server Hale trusted. If this thing was going to burn, it needed to burn beyond Goulburn, beyond state lines. The breakthrough came from a detail everyone else had ignored. One of Mercer's audio files hadn't been labeled with a date, just a location tag. Transfer Bay C. Hale recognized it immediately. Bay C wasn't used for inmates anymore. It had been decommissioned years ago after a fatal accident. Or at least, that's what the paperwork said. They drove back to the prison without authorization. Bay C sat at the far edge of the compound, a concrete scar half swallowed by weeds and rust. The door was locked, but the lock was new. Too new. Inside, the air was stale and cold. Old transport restraints lined the wall. Clipboards hung from hooks. A schedule board still updated weekly. Navarro's voice dropped to a whisper. This place is active. Hale found the ledger hidden beneath a loose floor panel. Names, dates, destinations that didn't exist, and signatures, administrative approvals from multiple departments. This wasn't a rogue operation. It was institutional. Before they could process it, footsteps echoed from the corridor, hands where I can see them. The voice was calm, authoritative. Hale turned slowly. Warden Malcolm Reeves stood in the doorway, flanked by two armed officers Hale didn't recognize. No uniforms, no badges. Detective Hale, Reeves said, almost kindly, "You really should have stopped digging." Navarro's hand twitched toward her weapon. One of the men raised his gun a fraction higher. Reeves sighed. Daniel Mercer was a problem. So was Jonah Pike. And now so are you. Hale steadied his voice. You're trafficking inmates, selling human beings to criminal networks. Reeves smiled faintly. We're reallocating liabilities. The justice system doesn't know what to do with men like Pike. We found a solution. A profitable one. Navarro snapped. Reeves didn't deny it. Mercer was supposed to be part of a quiet transfer. Witness protection, new identity, testimony later. But he got greedy. Wanted guarantees. Names on paper. So you killed him, Hale said. Reeves shook his head. No, I let the system handle him. Crow panicked. Pike made noise. Things escalated. And Pike? Hale asked. Reeves' eyes hardened. Pike was an example. Order requires fear. For a moment, Hale thought this was where it ended. Another locked room. Another body buried under paperwork. Then Reeves' phone rang. He frowned, answered, listened. His expression shifted, subtle but unmistakable. You're too late, Hale said quietly. Sirens wailed in the distance. Not prison alarms. Federal. Reeves ended the call slowly. You sent the files. Everywhere, Navarro said, including the video of you authorizing transfers. Reeves stared at them, then laughed softly. You think this ends with me? Minutes later, federal agents flooded Bay C. Guns drawn. Reeves was restrained without resistance, his calm finally cracking as cuffs closed around his wrists. As they were escorted out, Reeves leaned close to Hale. Mercer believed the truth would save him, he murmured. It didn't. It won't save you either. Weeks later, the story broke. Headlines screamed about corruption, illegal transfers, and human trafficking within one of the country's most secure prisons. Officials resigned. Investigations spread across states. Goulburn Prison became synonymous with betrayal. Daniel Mercer was posthumously named a key witness. His family received apologies that came far too late. The case was declared closed. But Hale couldn't sleep. 3 months after Reeves' arrest, a body was found near a freight terminal outside Melbourne. Male, hands bound with industrial zip ties, throat cut with surgical precision. No prison ties, no record, just a symbol carved into the skin. A small, neat letter. C. Hale stared at the photo, a cold realization settling in. The system hadn't died. It had adapted. And somewhere out there, someone had learned from Goulburn Prison. If the story shook you, stay close. Some truths don't stay buried, and the next one is already waiting.